Here we are with another React video. We're going to talk about fetch this time. Fetch to make API calls. I'm going to call the GitHub API. We're going to build something. It's going to be cool. So here I am with yet another blank create React app application generated from that tool that we started with at the very beginning of this video series. So let's see, what does it look like? It looks like it always looks right there. Let's go in and start tweaking. I don't want the header or the content. We're going to use our entire screen real estate in this video. Now that should update. Boom, everything's gone. All right, so let's go somewhere. APIs. No, api.github.com. You can see a number of interesting APIs you can call here. I'm going to call the user search API. Now if you take this, you'll see it has some options. Q is the first one we'll use. We're going to put an input on the screen, and you can type in there and hit a search button and search. And we're also going to change the page. I think that's all we're going to do here. Maybe we'll change per page. I don't know. Probably not. Just do page. Be a good example. If we want to look at the results look like, just like this, we can look for users that have the word stake somewhere related to them. Maybe that's their login. Maybe they have a repo with that name. Who knows? So let's go build something. Okay, here we are. Let's create an input. And so we'll put the name. What am I doing? I'm going to set the value of this to this.state.name. And so that's going to be my value. And create a constructor. Of course, call super first. And then this.state equals, and we will start off with name of a blank string. And this is going to be a controlled component, as we can see here. So I do need to have a function for handle name change. You know, I'm going to do it a different way, just because we've been doing it this way for the last few videos. So on change will equal this.handle name change. Now, if you're going to use this method and use, meaning this arrow function, and use evt.target.value to get the value out, you will actually need to pass the event object in and then through here. And the reason why is because this is the function being called, this arrow function, not this function, whenever the change happens. So therefore, the event object will be passed to this one, which means we have to send it down into here. So this is one of the negatives of doing it this way. But it's not that hard to deal with, so no big deal. All right, so I have that. I can say this.setState, set the name to evt.target.value, and I imagine at this point our input is going to work just fine. It does. Fantastic. Set a button. So I'm going to create a function here for handle search click, and so this will be the function that will get called whenever someone hits that search button. So when they hit that search button, we want to make a call to the GitHub API. So let's start with a super simple case. We're going to take the URL here for stake, and we're going to do a fetch. And then we'll come in and we will worry about getting the value out of state and using that. It'll be pretty easy once we get this part done. So fetch And then we are going to use this promise and say whenever the response comes back, what I want to do is return, I want to get the JSON, get the results as an object. And so I'm going to say response.json there. And then this should be our results. Let's take a look at this. I don't need anything in my input yet to try this because it is just using the hard-coded stick. So let's do a search. There we go. What did we get? We got our results, and here we go. Login, steak knife. So there we go. So we've done a fetch to the GitHub API to the user search URL using this, and those are our results. If I want to use what's in state, all I have to do is basically not use that and get that value in there. I'm going to use template literals because I like them. And say this dot state dot name. That should work. Let's try this again. Optimus. Search. Will we get back something that is Optimus related? Who in the world is that? No idea. It's definitely different. Oh, look at this. Optimus Crime. Excellent. So the query worked quite well, actually. So now that we have results coming back, it sure does make sense to go ahead and start rendering that on the page. And so I'm going to start with the state of having an array here, an array of items. Let's see, let's call them users. And ordered list, sure. This.state.users.map. Once again, what we're doing in a map is we're taking all of the data that's in the array, which right now is nothing, because we haven't put anything in there, but we're taking all the data and we're transforming it into something else. That's the purpose of map. And so in this case, I'm just going to return the list item and the login name. And let's go look, what's that called? It's called login. So I'm just going to say user.login. Now for the key, well, before we do the key, let's see the error. And so let's search for iPhone. Why not? All right, so I've searched for iPhone, I've got results, and I've done this, but I totally forgot to actually put the data in state. So if we look at the result that comes back from the API, all the results come back in a property called items in the object that is returned. So I think what I can do is I can say this.setState and say users is results.items. I think that's going to work much better. And so let's go back and do that iPhone again. Boom. All right. So look at all those logins. But I do get this warning. This is the key warning. And so I wanted to bring that up because if we look here in the result, we should see an ID. When you have IDs, I tend to use them as keys instead of the indexer. So now that should solve that warning. And so let's look for dude as a username. Crab dude. It's fantastic. Big snarf dude. Wisco dude. All right, Deuteronomy. I love that name. I have no idea who that is. Anyway, so this is working. We're calling the API. So let's, before we do any sort of paging, which is what I want to do next, let's recap what we've done here in these few minutes. So if we look at the component, we have default state of a name, and this is the value in the input, and a list of users that is blank or empty, I guess. So whenever we type for a while and hit enter, so when we're typing, we're updating the state, and this is what changes the control component. And whenever we hit the search button, it will actually do a fetch. This does an HTTP call and uses the name in state. It gets the response back. We return that, say response.json, that turns it into an actual object we can use. And I'll leave that in there just in case we need it for debugging. Then it takes that, and we're going to pull the items out, which is the array of actual users in the results, and put that in state. At that point, because I'm calling set state, it causes a re-render of the component. And now that I actually have users, map will return a non-empty array of list items, and therefore we see list items on the screen. That's the flow of how all of that works. So let's do this. Let's add paging. So one thing I wonder about the API is there was a parameter called page. I wonder if their API is 0-based or 1-based in terms of page. So steak knife at 0 and 1, but not 2. Okay, so page 1 is actually page 1, so we can take advantage of that. So we are going to start at page 1. Now, if we want to move through the results, we need a button for next. And when we click on that, we are going to run a function. This handle next click, I suppose, should work. Handle next click, what's it going to do? What it's going to do is it's going to need to increment the page count and then make a call essentially to the API with the page number. So first of all, I'm going to do this in a way that repeats this code. I'm going to copy it, and then we'll refactor it to make it not horrible. So let's get the page out. So const page equals this.state.page is what I called it. Yes. +1. I'm going to say, all right, fetch this and put page on the end of that. Right there. So this will be this value here, and it should go up a new page. Oh, and I really should update the state. So the page is going to be the new page. At this point, now we should be pretty good. And so this fetch will happen. It will get all the data back, except it'll be at a different page of data, and it will replace the old users with the ones that come back from this API call. This might just work as is. So now let's look for Megatron users. So total count of 162, we got back 30, so we should be able to page. So let's Lordly123 is the first one. If we hit next, we get another page. Excellent, that totally worked. Cool. So that's simple paging. Now let's make it less horrible. So I've got a function for searching that fires whenever you do a search click. And we got another one that fires whenever you do the next for paging. We obviously need to combine these into one because we don't want all this duplicated code. So I'm going to create a single function called make API call. And I'm going to take this version of it because this is the version that actually has the page in it. Okay. So here we go. That has the page in it. I'm going to make this API call, and we have default page, and so what we should be able to do here is just say this dot make API call. Right, so, and I think that will work as is. This isn't actually going to work in this case. I'll talk about why in a moment. Now, page is not defined. Well, the reason why page is not defined is because I created that in here, and I'm not actually getting this one out of state. I will, at this point, get this out of state, and now we'll be fine. So we say Megatron search Lordly123. Oh, hey, look, it didn't actually work. Nothing changed. Oh, now it changed. Ah, so why did that change? Well, here's the deal. Let's go to the network tab and see what we can find. And so we did one API call on page 1. That's the original call. And then whenever we hit next, it made another API call right there, but it still used the same page. And so that's why we saw the same results. And then when we hit it the next time, it used page 2 when I wanted to use page 3. What do? That's not good. That is certainly not what I want. Well, and more importantly, why is it doing that? And here's why. Whenever you call a set state is an asynchronous operation, which means, let's say we hit handle next click and we're on page 1. So it's going to take the page, increment it by 1, and call this page 2. Then we're going to set state page. This 2 will go be set for page, but at this point right here, this .state.page is still 1. It won't be until later, I think after this next render. I don't know exactly the timing here, but it will be after this API call happens that the page will actually be updated, or the state will actually be updated to page 2. And so therefore, when we come here to this .state.page, it is still page 1. What do? Well, we've got a few options. What we could do is we could do this a somewhat manual way that has nothing to do with React. We can call this and pass in page. Now, this will work fine if we take this. We're not going to pass in page here because this doesn't know, or it can actually just say, let's just not pass it in. If page is undefined, and so this would be whenever this makes the call, I'm going to set page to this.state.page. And then use that variable at that point, and that should work fine. So in the case of handle search click, I will call this. This will be undefined. Since it's undefined, it will get what's in state and then use that. In the case of handle next click, it's going to pass in the page, which is incremented. And so let's try it. Lord Lee. There it is. It changed. That worked just fine. Another route. Let's undo this. There we go. So we're back where we're at with the flaw. What I want to do is I want to delay this function call until after state has been updated. You can pass in after the object you call into set. You pass into set state. You can pass in a function, and this function will fire after state has updated. And so after state is updated, the page will actually be the value that we want. And so we can just pull it right out of state. And so let's try it again. Megatron. And that worked. Either way actually works fine. So let me restate the problem now that we've gone through that. So whenever you call set state, it does not immediately actually change what you get at this.state. That will actually happen later. So if you need, if you're depending on that for some sort of operation, like for example making an API call like we're doing right here, you need to be able to handle that with this constraint of the fact that this.state will not be up to date. So how do you do it? Well, what we did is we just used a little trickery of passing in the page to force that to not use what is in state. That was the first route. That works fine. I guess it really doesn't matter all that much. The second way we did it is to say, okay, well, whenever we call set state, we're going to pass in after the object a function. And this function will get called after state has been updated. And so that means that at that point, the page number will in fact be the right page number. So those are both tools in your tool chest for solving this type of problem. Okay, one last thing. I want to do a little conditional rendering here. Actually, I take that back. I'm going to end this video with fetch, and in the next video, I'm going to talk about conditional rendering, because it would be super nice to, instead of having this unordered list on the page without any data, I want to show like a message to the user, hey, you need to search before you see data. And then when they search, they get something. Or maybe even if they search and they get no results, it also gives them a message. Let's do that in the next video so you can see how conditional rendering would work, so we can swap in this or that into the page.